Okay, Andy. It's just past 7, so I think let's introduce ourselves and get going. So I'll start. Hello, everyone. I'm Tony Goldstone. I'm a radiologist up in East Yorkshire and director at Goldstone PenFinTech. And I've been on the kind of pensions side of things for the best part of a decade now, with various roles, including at the BMA, etc. And so you may know me through that, or you may have been one of the many users of the modeler from last year. So we've got quite a bit to update you on to bring you up to what's going on in 26, 27. So I will start by just letting Andy introduce himself, although Andy needs no introduction, and then we will get going and we'll talk you through what the offering is going to be for 26, 27. So over to you, Andy.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Andy Pow. I'm a specialist medical accountant and have been for over 30 years. A strong interest in the pension side of things. Insofar as the AI called me an NHS pension whisperer the other day, which amused me quite a lot. So I've been helping Tony, particularly with the new modelers that have been developed this year, in fully testing them and trying to beat his system, which is quite tricky to do at times. So, Tony, back to you to take us through where we are.
Okay, brilliant. So just a bit of preamble. So lots of you, about 5,500 of you, registered and used the 25, 26 modelers. And it was using a platform that I've been using for 4 or 5 years with kind of various BMA hats on, for lots of campaigns like Doesn't Pay to Stay campaign, which was really successful and got loads of changes through from the government that we wanted, using a brilliant platform called Calculator Studio. And although I loved it, and lots of people like the tools we created with it, it was pretty limited. And one of its biggest pains was that it produced these very long pages and you couldn't kind of have a proper multi-page tool. So we were toying with the idea of moving anyway. But then we got the bombshell news about 3 months ago, that basically Calculator Studio were closing down their service at the end of August, the 31st of August. And they gave us 3 months' notice to get off it, which obviously has just been kind of a massive task to get all of this turned around. So a huge thanks to developers that we've worked with both here and in Germany, to turn it round really quickly, and hopefully you like what you see, and it's a much better offering actually than we had before. So this is going to be pretty informal. There's no slides or anything like that. But kind of, Andy, do you just want to give a bit of kind of context of kind of why people need to understand their numbers every year and why this hasn't gone away?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the annual allowance tax has been a problem for a while now, and equally, we've got a secondary sort of tax problem around the 100,000 level where people start to lose tax-free personal allowances and childcare yeah, allowances and things like that. So we've got a couple of allowances which have been frozen now for a long, long time. And of course, as pay has gone up, it means more and more people are going to get caught. And what we've seen, certainly in 24, 25, 25, 26, is consultants' pay has gone up, and in fact, GP pay has gone up as well. And we are seeing more and more people breach some of the annual allowance side of things. But made worse by that is going back previous years. If you remember, you can sort of always look back the 3 previous years to see if you've got any unused allowances, and that's kind of saved people in those early years. But as we move into 26, 27, a lot of people have used up their unused allowances going forward. So we're going to find more and more people as each year goes on get caught by annual allowance tax. We've also faced with a problem, particularly in England, where the information coming through isn't sufficient for you to complete your tax returns. So, A, you can't plan. B, you can't do your tax side of things. And C, it's really, really important. It's really important you start to understand it. So that's the context. We think more people are going to get caught by it, which is why Tony's and his team have been working on this modeler to make sure it tries to give you as much information as early as possible so you can make decisions.
Yeah, and just to say, I've obviously been kind of bemoaning how bad things have been in England, and it's the same in Wales for a long time. But I think other schemes in England have been trying hard for the illustrious title of the worst pension administrator of the year. So things are actually worse in many regards north of the border in SPPA land, etc. But I think it's fair to say that it's pretty bad everywhere. None of the schemes kind of properly provided for McLeod, and that hit all the schemes really hard, and they're all struggling to kind of keep specialist staff and do admin in a timely way, and even meet the legal deadlines related to that. But onwards and upwards, let's talk through the modeler. So one thing to say about the modeler is we now have a new app called Scenario Explorer. So previously, when you saved a scenario, you got these kind of horrible emails that had hundreds of fields listed in them, and Calculator Studio wouldn't let us play with those emails. But now you're going to get a really nice email that kind of gives you a link back to your scenario and also takes you back to Scenario Explorer. So you can save as many scenarios as you want on whichever tier you want. So if you want to try, loads of different, what if my income is this, or what if my income is that, or what if I get this promotion, or what if I do this salary sacrifice cut, etc., you can save them all as scenarios, and then they will all be here in your Scenario Explorer. Now I'm already signed into this, but this is username and password, and you can add two-factor authentication with Google Authenticator as well. So this will become your kind of secure place to store where all your scenarios are. And Scenario Explorer, it kind of has two roles. One, it obviously stores all your scenarios and allows you to look at them. And I'm going to come back to that after me and Andy have just talked you through the actual modeler itself. But then it also links out so you can go into the editor. So that's exactly what I'm going to do now. So we've just got some numbers in that me and Andy have done just to talk you through it. And I'm pressing edit, and it's going to take us through to the modeler. Now, depending on your speed, if your internet connection, the first load will take a few seconds, as it did there for me. I'm on a pretty fast connection, and it may be a little bit slower if you're on a slower computer. And instead of those kind of horrific long pages that you had before, everything is now split up into this nice top level and second level menu. So I'm going to talk you through all of these intro ones, and get you as far as bronze, basic growth, and then Andy's going to pick up some silver, and then we're going to talk about some of the other tools like our new plus product, which is another way of getting data into the modeler. But I'm going to kind of show it you in kind of fully manual mode, if you like. But I'm not going to dwell too long on that, because 5,500 of you had used the previous modeler, and actually these basic data entry pages are almost identical. So you can see when you come through, you can see which level you've purchased. This person has purchased the new platinum level, and more of that later. Each purchase is obviously relevant to the tax year. So this is the 26-27 tax year, and then each purchase will always come with the previous 3 tax years. So 26-27 will include the 3 carry forward years before that as well. And then in 12 months time next year we'll be on to the next tier of modeler, and then it will be exactly the same. So this kind of intro page is very similar to the previous one. And then let's just move through the navigation and intro. So if we click on next, these exact 3 same questions that were there in the previous modeler that are absolutely core to how the modeler works. The first is what schemes are you in? So most people, 80% or 70% of people are 1995 and 2015 members who started before 2012, but a much bigger increasing proportion of you now are also in 2008, as newer consultants coming through are in 2008, and in fact some people will also be in 2015 only, either because they started after 2015, and some GPs and even brand new consultants are 2015 only now, and similarly people who've retired and returned and only in the 2015 scheme can also use the modeler in 2015 only to get, for example, annual allowance estimates in the 2015 only. And then there's also a smaller cohort that started between 2012 and 2015, and they've got slightly different entry requirements. You need to tell it whether you're a hospital doctor or an officer, or if you're a GP, you select practitioner, and then that changes all the inputs for you. And you need to tell it whether or not you've been in the scheme since April 2022. because if you haven't, there are still options for you if you've been in and out of the scheme, but this kind of modeler without concierge won't give you accurate results if you've been out since April 2022. So for now, we'll just stick with those options. Basic pay data. So I'm not going to go through this because there's loads of videos from the previous modeler. Very simple. You can get a total reward statement, and it will show you what your post rollback service is in the 1995 section for this member. So 21 years, 147 days. There will be a page that shows previous pays. This shows 23, 24, 25, and when the new TRS comes out, we're hoping around August 19th, that will also show year ending 2026, but if not, you can get that from a March 2026 payslip, and then you can put those values in here, and you also need to tell it, which isn't on your TRS, but hopefully you will know it, what your work time equivalent is, or your average work time equivalent over the year if that's changed. So this member can get all of those numbers from here, or from an 05 service extract if you're in England and Wales, and then they can put in their work time equivalent. On the next page, it's going to ask you if you've got an added years contract. If you haven't, that's a 0. If you have, you can use this helper here. Just put your start age and your end age and how much you bought, and then it will tell you what number to put in here. If you're not sure about your contract details, if you click on this link, if you're in England and Wales, it will take you to a template to request something called an 05 service extract, and then that will have that. In fact, this is just a screenshot from an 05 service extract that just shows you all of those contract details so you can work them out. If you're a consultant or a resident that took strike days in 23-24, you can say, do you want to include them or not, and if you did, how many you did, and then you can put them in there because that affects your annual allowance calculations. Now this member is a 1995 member, so there's no reckonable pay here, but we're still just showing people kind of what the main driver is of annual allowance charges. So this member's pay profile is here, and they're in 1995, and you can see that there's been a bumper year here in 24-25, and that for this member is for two reasons. One, as Andy mentioned in the preamble, there was obviously the pay awards after industrial action, and that gave a big pay award, but then this member's also incremented, and that's why there's big pay increase over these 2 tax years. So these orange and red are where this member might expect trouble. Now it's worth saying, if I just change the scheme type quickly to 2008, firstly there's a whole load more data you've got to put in. You've got to put your pay data all the way back from 15-16 to 21-22, but then it will also show you how there's absolutely no correlation between your pensionable pay increases and reckonable pay changes. And that's because reckonable pay uses a horrendously complicated mechanism to work out your basically best of 3 year period. And that best of year three year period over the last 10 may not be your last 3 years. So for example, for this member, it's way back here and then way back here, and everything's been very much distorted by very high inflation values with kind of COVID and the war and stuff afterwards in Ukraine. So a lot of people kind of say, well, I'm a newish consultant, why am I getting charges when a senior consultant at my department isn't? And it may just be that you're on 2008 down here and they're on 1995, and you can see that the kind of orangey bits are very different for people in different schemes. So I think the main moral of that story is, don't try and compare yourself to a peer, because it's impossible, because unless they have an absolutely identical, they were appointed on the same date of the same month and they've never been out the scheme, etc, 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 you will not be the same as the person next to you. So don't try and compare. Everyone needs to know their own numbers in their own year. And then finally, exactly the same as last year, we need to give it a pay slip, and ideally we need to give it a pay slip after July. So we've just had July pay slips, and then so we can put the July pay slip values in here. We can take the values from pensionable pay and the period summary, we can put them in, and then it will give us an estimated pensionable pay, and that's the kind of the whole basis of the modelling. So all of that is pretty much the same as the previous modelers. So I'm just going to take to bronze, and then I'm going to let Andy take over while I have some sparkling water because I've given up on Diet Coke, and then he can talk you through some of silver, and then we're going to go out to talk about plus. So in bronze, you can put in, if you've had a pension saving statement, you can put your values in there and then tell it whether you want to use an estimate or official. And then this is kind of what it's all about in bronze. It's about getting this basic growth. So there's a bit more than basic growth. So the growth is here. So whether or not you're in 1995 or 2008 or 2015 or any mixture of those, and whether or not you're a GP or an officer or a hospital doctor, you'll get this estimated output. And you can see also a summary of the service. You can see a summary of the pay that's been used for those. And for this member, because they're full-time, 2015 pay is the same as 1995 pay. But if you're not full-time, 1995 pay is work-time equivalent, so those values would be different. And then you can also see the total reward statement values. Obviously we're kind of not up to 26, 27 total reward statements, so you won't see those values there. But depending what version of the TRS you've got, so some people at the moment either have got none, and there's several 100,000 people in the NHS scheme that disgracefully have got no TRS. Some people will be a year out of date in 23-24. Some people will have 24-25, and then we're hoping August 19th. Some people will have 25-26. So you can validate against those numbers. So that's what bronze will get you, and that's an estimate of your growth. But it won't tell you whether or not you've got things like an annual allowance charge. So I'm going to have a drink and hand over to Andy, but I'm going to press next. And so Andy, if you want to move on to the next page or change any values, let me know, and take it away.
Okay, yeah. So we're just going to have a look at some of the sort of tapering issues that apply and how that's dealt with through the modeler. Just quickly backtracking for any GPs, if we've got any GPs on the call, when it comes to data entry, it's slightly trickier for you guys because at best, when the TRS comes out in August, at best it will be up to date to 24-25. So you won't have 25-26, you won't have 26-27. So you are going to have to estimate those amounts. Also, because of the multitude of issues to do with how GP pensions are calculated, and they can be incredibly complex at times. The modeler can't deal with all of those things, but actually, it will give you a pretty accurate view of your growth. So I just wanted to raise that at this point. So once we've worked out on the bronze side, as Tony said, will give you the growth figures. So if you're just interested in where am I at, am I, I'm clearly below a certain level of income. I'm just looking at the, where I'm at. That may be fine for you, but a lot of people that are interested in annual allowance is because particularly your pay combined with your other income. And remember, when we're having a look at tapering, we have to look at the threshold income. The threshold income isn't just your NHS pay; it's your NHS pay plus all the other things. All the other, if you've got private practice as self-employed, if you've got bank interest, if you've got share dividends, if you've got rental accounts, all that kind of thing comes into play. So once you start to go above 200,000. Then actually the calculation, not for the growth changes, but the allowance available changes. So what the silver part of the section does is allow us to start to deal with that. So again, pretty similar to last year, in that we've got two ways of doing this. So that this first page is really, you can just enter the total figures. So 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, and then obviously an estimate for 26, 27. If you've made any private pension contributions, you can put that in as well. And also, if you want to sort of work out what your margin rate of tax is, and bear in mind your margin rate of tax is the tax you pay on the highest level of income. So at the top level for England, Wales, Northern Ireland, it's going to be 45%. Scotland, it's going to be 48%. But it's going to be probably 40, 45, 48, somewhere in between for you. What we also can do on this page is just a bit further down is when we're having a look at all the calculations, we have to look back. We have to look back those the previous years to work out really how it's going to affect everything. Now, one of the ways of doing that is just to get the information from if you've had an RPSS or a pension saving statement for previous years. And I know we've got in the chat a question about haven't had anything. We will come back to that. But if you've got that information, we've got it just allow quick data entry at the bottom where it allows you to put in your combined growth on the right hand side. And if you've got your tax information, the threshold income calculation for those previous years, because that will just calculate then the carry forward automatically for you. Same for GPs, same for hospital workers, okay, in the officer scheme. So that's just a little extra tool we've put in this year. Just fit to the next one. So if you're struggling to work out really what all your threshold income is, we've got a different calculator, which is just the calculation, again, similar to last year. So we've put in, picking up your NHS taxable pay. So bear in mind, remember, if you are in hospitals, your P60 information is already net of pension contributions. So that you put in your P60 information on the left-hand side. If you're a GP, it's probably going to be gross pension contributions. So you just have to get your tax return information, take your taxable profits and take off your pension contributions to put it in that box. Add in any other taxable income, add any, tax rebate reliefs you've got in for, things like your, GMC costs, etc. And that will calculate the taxable income, which is used for the threshold calculation for you. So gives you the same information on page one. It's just a calculator to do it. Okay. So we then move on. In the silver model, we then also have an accountant's view, which is something you can share with your accountant. What this does is then actually start to calculate. It calculates the threshold income. It calculates the adjusted income, which is then what you work out what the allowance is based on if you're a particularly high earner. And it will calculate the annual allowance tax charge that you have got based on the information you put in. And what it will then also do, it's right at the bottom, the blue line there is the taxable allowance. It will then split it, I think, between the 95-08 scheme and the 2015 scheme, because if you're looking at things like schemes pays, it's got to be split. If you're looking at disclosing on your tax return, you may need slightly different reference numbers. So that page just allows you to do that. But what it also allows you to do is just at the top there, it's the bit where we start to allow to play around with things a little bit more. So on the left-hand side, as Tony's just moving that slider thing, that slider will move our 26, 27 total income up and down. So whilst we may have entered a figure on page one, actually this allows you to play around with it. So you can see really what the impact is. If I could manage to drop down to £199,999, what the impact is going to be for me. It also allows you to put in, if you're going to decide, if you're quite close to those limits, and you might decide, actually, I want to talk to my accountant or my advisor around paying an amount into a SIP to get me below the figure. It allows you to play around with that as well. So we've got two different dynamics working there, which allow you to play around with it. And when you do that, what you will see is that blue line with the tax charge calculated will change. Okay. So again, it's similar to previous years, but it's just all a bit more menu driven now and a bit neater and tidier. We just move on. So we've got a 3-year summary as well. So that, again, just useful to know, bear in mind, what we've got to remember, if you've had an annual allowance tax charge, your pension's also gone up, okay? Your pension doesn't go up, then you don't get annual allowance tax charges. So it's always useful to remember the context, because I think people get very focused on annual allowance. It's horrendous, it's horrible, it's something I don't agree with, but actually it's driven by actually your pension rising quite significantly. So this page will give you Again, slightly different, but we actually got some graphs. We actually show you how much your pension has gone up year on year. So you can actually compare it with the left-hand side, which is actually the annual allowance tax charge. And I'm not saying it gets rid of the annual allowance tax charge, but it might make you feel a bit better if you do have a slight annual allowance tax charge, if you see your pension has gone up quite significantly, because it is the other side to the equation. So this screen will just give us the three different scenarios, and or sort of 3 different years, and we'll have the summary information again, but also show you the incremental pension that you've accrued in that period.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just move on to Plus now. So I've been doing kind of self modelling for a decade now, really with the aim of allowing people to try and kind of take control of their finances, to understand it a little bit better. It's all been about education, so people are in control, they know their numbers. But one of the kind of biggest challenges, right from going back to the kind of the DNUK days, even before the BMA modeler, there was I had a free modeler that had been downloaded almost 10,000 times. But one of the biggest challenges is, however easy you make it, kind of spreadsheets and these tools aren't for everyone, and some people struggle to pull the right number off the payslip. Some payslips are pretty complicated. You've got gross pay, you've got taxable pay, you've got pensionable pay, you've got year-to-date pay, you've got period pay, etc. So people get it wrong, and so this is what Doc Launch or Plus is all about, is trying to automate that. So I'm just going to log in and make some show you how we can use this to take it into the modeler. So I'm just going to hopefully move the screen across a little bit, and then there should be some files on the left, and then we can kind of show you how that's going to work. So the first thing to say about Plus is that if you purchase the Plus add-on, it's going to be locked to you. For me, I can upload anyone's because I've logged in as an admin, but for a normal punter who's bought it, this one is John Doe's, and it's going to be locked to John Doe, so only John Doe's documents will be accepted if you accidentally upload somebody else's payslip for it. So we'll just start off with the absolute basics. So from that previous one, the basics were we needed a TRS and we needed some payslips. So I'll do this one here. So if we grab these payslips, now it's asking for March payslips from 23 to 26, and the latest payslips, ideally a post-July one. I think we've actually got some extra ones in there for a bonus, but it will just ignore anything that it doesn't need. And you can see that's it, those payslips are now in. So if we come down to here, I'll just make that a bit wider again. So we can see it's read and imported all of that payslip information. If I click on further info here as well, I can see it's got some further information in which we're going to need for the Plus, for the Platinum modelling later. So for example, you can see there's a car lease value, there's on-call payments, there's CA payments, and additional PAs to work out non-pensionable pay as well. But this is all kind of the core data that's needed. So the pensionable pay, the taxable pay for tapering, the period pay to work it out. Just dragged in and processed in literally a second or two. And similarly, let's pull in a total reward statement for this member, and then exactly the same in a couple of seconds that's processed that. So you can see it's pulled out the from the 20 odd page document, it's pulled out what the service is, it's pulled out what the pensions and lump sums are with option A and option B. And it's also here now because it's got kind of two sources of truth. It's got some TRS pay values and it's also got some payslip values. So it can see there's a perfect match there between the two. But here you can see there's the same amount out in each year. And what this is a correctly processed back pay. So 560.32 for this member's gone out of 1 year and into the other year. So you get this nice balanced match, and that means that it's been processed correctly, because paradoxically, if when you do this you get a match for all 3 years, and if you're a consultant, that might suggest that they've not processed your back pay correctly, which might mean you overpay an annual allowance charge. And we saw that with concierge last year happening in around half of consultants. So that was a really big issue. So that's the absolute kind of basic data. So that's kind of all you need in Plus. So that can literally be done in a couple of seconds. And then you could just say send to my modeler, and it will take through to the modeler, and that's it. But this can take a whole host of further documents. So let's just go through some further documents as well. So, for example, if you've had pension saving statements, they can come in as well. And then we will now get an additional section with pension saving statements, and then that will allow us to put in the pension saving statement. So you can see it's pulled in all of these opening values, the closing values. These are the growth values that you could put in if you want to use the actuals rather than the estimates. But let's keep on going. So the scheme have now got a new document that shows your scheme pays summary. So all the scheme pays loans that you've had accepted and the process. So we can put that in as well. And let's also put in an HMRC extract and an RPSS. So those of you that have had and processed an RPSS will usually have both of those documents, and often also an O5 service and pay extract. So let's also add that. So now we've kind of got pretty much a full load of green lights. The only ones that I haven't been uploaded here is if you're not confident about calculating your threshold income in previous years, because it does require a calculation, you can go to your HMRC account, you can download your summary for each of those tax years there, depending how many you've submitted, and it will also read those to calculate your threshold income. So just on a couple of those pages, so you can see, for example, here it's pulled in all of the data from the RPSS. It's also pulled in the threshold incomes and then calculated the adjustable incomes. And then you can see here, if we just put the tax and the scheme pays split as well, so we can see it's kind of automatically calculated in the background that there were tax charges due in those years, and what the split was if there's a scheme pays split, and also it's worked out. For example, there's a couple here that go over tax thresholds, so it's done it correctly, allocating some of it to 40%, some of it to 45%, etc. So a really powerful tool for getting all of your data out and correctly into your modeler. So once we've done that, we can just say, and I've added a lot more than was needed there. As I say, you can just literally add your pay slips, and plus or minus an O5 service and pay extract. You can phone up BSA, ask for that over the phone. They will send you that literally whilst you're on the phone with no waiting. And those are available for people even without total reward statements. Where it says we've not got any of your data, they will have an O5 service and pay extract for you. You can drag it into there, and then if we now say send that to my PenFinTech modeler, and then what that will do is launch it for you. So I'm just going to make that full page again. And so now we can see, so Tony Test Web added by GPFT Plus on the 9th of August at 6:33. I need to change that because obviously the hour's out by an hour, so I'll change that in the background. So, but that's all of the data that's kind of come back, and it will also have sent me an email saying that we've saved that scenario. So if you want to go back to that scenario and then, for example, add another payslip when the payslip comes, or add the latest TRS when your TRS updates, or add your pension saving statements when you get it, you'll basically have Plus for the year, so you can keep on coming back to Plus and adding things as and when you want. And so I'm not going to go through all the ones that we've already gone through because we've already gone through them. So what I'm going to do now is Andy took you up to, I just need to do that again because I didn't give it a, I'm going to make it platinum. You obviously won't get to choose which tier you want and get it for free, but let me just send all of those again, but make it platinum so I can show you all the features. So now you can see that's come in as platinum. It's got all of those documents sent in at 7:34, and then if we go back to where we were, we can pick up where I think Andy, you went up to 3-year summary. So I'll pick up from 100k tax trap, Okay, so this member has got income of £206,000, so the 100k tax trap doesn't really affect them. But this is still a useful page. It still will break down their marginal pay. So, for example, if they've got a Type 4 student loan, they can see that they're going to keep 44% of their pay, 9% if it goes for student loan, 2% NI, 45% on income tax. But what this page is all about, and I'm not going to dwell on it because I've done this in previous videos, it's all about this brilliant chart from the IFS that shows how people can be really worse off after childcare expenses by flipping over to 100. So for example, if I change this to, let's say, £104,000, and we say we've got childcare of £12,000 and £5,000, and let's just say we're in Scotland and we've got a Type 4 student loan, we can see that there's kind of a brutal drop off at 100k, and you can also see that this person's not keeping an awful lot of their money. So now this person's only keeping 21.5% after a marginal rate of 67.5, NI of 2, and student loan of 9. And so it's really brutal if you kind of caught between 100 and 124 thereabouts. And so this just allows you to explore it. So for example, this member, it will show them that they've got quite a bit of headroom after their NHS pension this year. So this member's got £39,000 of headroom. So because they've only just dipped over the 100k mark by 4k, they could, for example, say, well, okay, let's see what happens if I put £5,000 into a SIP. And then by putting £5,000 into a SIP, all of a sudden they'll get to keep a lot more of their money after tax and NI. That marginal rate has gone down to 44%, etc., etc. So everything can be looked at in great detail for your specific circumstances, whether or not you've got childcare costs, whether or not you've got a student loan, whether or not you're in Scotland, to work out your exact position to navigate the 100k tax trap. And that was one of the most popular features last year's. But for now, let's just we'll take that back to where it was. I forgot where it was. Was it 205, Andy?
I think so, yeah.
205,000. And we'll just keep £1,000 pension in for now. And then if we go to SIP analysis, this will show what the effective cost is of buying a SIP. So again, this member has bought £1,000 SIP. Well, let's increase the SIP now, because if they're at 205 and they want to get below 200, for example, let's say they want a £6,000 SIP, so they can see that they still get no tax charge because they had enough headroom for this member in this year, and they can see what the cost of that SIP is. So the effective cost of putting £6,000 to a pension for this member is £3,300, because they pay the scheme a certain amount and then they get the tax relief claim back through their tax return, and so it makes the SIP good value for this member without risking an AA charge. So that's the end of silver. So silver kind of added tapering and 100k tax trap as the principal things in that really nice accountant view. And now let's move forward to gold. So the raison d'etre of gold really is to look at two things in more detail. One is to look at scheme pays, and then the next thing after scheme pays is to look at the tapering issue. And then there's a new feature here. So if you are plus or concierge, that means you can bring in your pre-existing scheme pays loans, and then if you'd brought any in, they would have been there. But what these views will allow you to do in lots of detail is look at what the effective cost is if you've got an annual allowance charge of using scheme pays. And so there's this kind of simplified view that shows this is the amount of pension that you'll keep. The light blue is what you'll get at the ages you've chosen to retire by going early, and this is how much you're going to lose via Scheme Pays. But the crucial thing is your pension is still gone up a lot, even if you've used Scheme Pays. And then it will show you, for example, for this member in this year, for every £7, for every £1 they've put in gross, they're going to get £7.12 gross before tax as well. So it really helps this member to decide, do they want to spend £19,000, for example, for this member for this year on Scheme Pays, or do they want a Scheme Pays reduction? And they can tweak with all of these, because by changing all of these things, that will change all of these bar charts, because it will depend whether or not they've got actuarial reduction. It will depend how long the Scheme Pays loan is. Average mortality of 8 to 9 is the actuarial value, basically the scheme used for higher earners. For typical earners, it's around 88 in a man and around 90 in a woman. And then you can see how that works. But there's also a really nice new tool that will show you a break-even analysis, and I'll come on to that later. So that's the Scheme Pays impact. And then we've got the tapering trap advanced analysis. And what this does is it basically is based on, people that follow me on Twitter will know I tweeted this graph a couple of years ago with the 24-25 pay award, and it's basically a rip-off of the IFS graph on 100k, just to emphasise that we have exactly the same thing going on for some members in some years. So in a year where you've got high pay growth, you can have this effect where you've got a big cliff after you take away annual allowance, and that can leave you with a big worse off earning period. So you're literally in this triangle paying to work. But the key thing about this chart is this chart was about this one member in this 1 year, in the same way that the 100k chart is about that member in that year with those aged children and those childcare costs. All of this you have to look at every year. So in fact, for this member, you can see there is no tax cliff impact. So we can see here that there is no drop off. So the tax cliff impact is zero. So in fact, you can see here these lines don't start to diverge until much higher. So this member in this year, using these numbers, they can pick a number all the way up to 240 odd k before they've even start to get an increase in tapering. And this just kind of emphasizes that you have to look at your situation in detail every year, and not just assume, for example, you can't go over 200k, because it depends what your pension growth is and all the other factors on what that looks like and how these lines work out for you. So before I go on to Platinum, I'm just going to come back to show you Scenario Explorer. So one of the things that Scenario Explorer will do is it'll allow you, once you've saved your scenario, it will come back into Scenario Explorer, and you can go through all of your charts that you've saved. But the other thing is it comes with some video credits, and the video credits will allow you to go through a silver video, a gold video, and a platinum video, depending which tier you've bought, and then it will talk you through your scenario. So it will talk not in kind of general terms, it will talk about your exact numbers. So I'm just going to let it play just for a couple of minutes just to show you this new feature, which is the Scheme Pays break-even analysis. Now I apologise, this is still in development. It'll all be working and polished by the time it comes out, but I've clipped my chin off here, so you just have to imagine my whole chin is there for when it comes out. So I'm just going to press play, and it will just show you what this really powerful feature does, because it helps talk you through your particular numbers.
Watch the arrow. From about £216,060, the yellow line peels away from the green. Below there, extra pay is taxed the ordinary way. Now the newest Gold Plus page, the scheme pays break even. Every annual allowance charge gives you the same choice. Pay it yourself from post-tax savings and keep your pension untouched, or let the scheme settle it as a loan that reduces your pension for life. Which is cheaper depends on tax, on interest, and above all on how long you live. Let's start with your most recent charge, 2025-26, the next decision to make. 5 sliders drive it, and you can move them all. Your 95-08 retirement age, 57, your 2015 retirement age, 61, your estimated age of death, 89 to start, what your cash is worth, by default the same as inflation, like your pension, but you can raise it at your own risk if you think cash will beat inflation, and the loan interest rate. Move anyone and the answer moves. The bars up here tell it 1 year at a time for the 2025-26 charge. Green, while scheme pays, has cost you less in total. Red, once it has cost you more. The arrow marks the break-even age. The lines below add each option up. The dark blue is the cash you'd hand over paying the 2025-26 charge yourself. The light blue is the pension reduction net of tax, stacking up from retirement. Where they cross is the break-even age, arrowed here, 92. Hover anywhere for the exact figures. So for 2025-26, live beyond 92 and paying it yourself works out cheaper. Die before it and scheme pays wins. Move the sliders and watch this verdict move.
So I'll just pause out there. So, but you get the idea. Basically, it will give you kind of expert narration of your scenario, and you can save multiple scenarios, and it'll come with a number of video credits. You can do a number of scenarios, and then if you don't want to do it in that kind of video mode, you can still go through it in this kind of talk through mode, and it will talk you through it, and then you can then kind of go back and say, well, okay, my health's not that great, so maybe I estimate my mortality is going to be 85, and I don't want to go at 57. I actually want to go at 55. But then I might retire and return and work through till 62, and you can see all of these values are going to constantly change to give you a break even for your charge and your individual tax year, to help you decide what you want to do. Now, really important to kind of emphasize this kind of important bit down here. So none of this is financial advice. This is purely education, just to try and talk you through what your numbers look for you, because I think scheme pays used to get a bit of a bad press, and I think a lot of people fear scheme pays without understanding what the real impact is. So this allows you to kind of, you can set your own variables, and you can even set what you think future interest might be, because it includes something called scape. And so we know that scheme pays has been below 1.7 and 3% over the last decade. So, even if you said, okay, well, let's look at the worst case scenario of CPI plus 4, I think it's unimaginable it could really, go above that. And then you can see, well, look, I'm still, quids in at the ages that I want to live by doing option X versus option Y. But the point is you're completely in control of it. And then this kind of scenario explorer again will just let you go through all of the other charts that you've seen, so you can just go through your scenarios. You can go through all of your bits and see exactly how they look. This is one where a scheme pays summary has come through. So as I said, with Plus or with Concierge, you can upload your preceding scheme pays summary, and then you can see what the impact of all of your loans up until the current year are on your pension. So the grey is the pension you get, or the lump sum you get. The blue is how much that's going to be eroded by scheme pays. But all of gold and silver stop at 26, 27. So neither of them are forward-looking tools. So I'm going to just quickly, and I'm trying to remember which one we were in. I think we're in this one here. Just going to take you forward to what, or were we in this one here? We were in this one here, weren't we? Going to take you forward to what platinum looks like, because the platinum bit is all completely new. So I can see it's already 7:50, so I'm going to do this quite quickly, but hopefully still just give it enough time to kind of do it justice. So platinum by default comes with concierge, so we will work through your documents and ask you some questions to pre-fill this page, but you can still go back and edit it as often as you want. So question 1 is asking, we've got your historic scheme pays. So question 1 is saying, if you've got scheme pays in this model, how do you want to settle them? So if it's ticked, they will say put them all to scheme pays, because if you're like me and you've had scheme pays in quite a few years, I started off using savings. I very quickly ran out of savings, or decided actually I'd rather invest my money than spend my money on scheme pays, but that's my personal decision, not advice. And so you can choose exactly which of your scheme pays charged go to the future. We then ask a little bit about you as a consultant. So are you a consultant in England, Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland? It is initially, this tool, going to be for officers only. So initially consultants, we're going to add in SAS doctors as well. It's not particularly useful for residents at this point, because you really need to know the start of your main appointment. So be it either as a GP or a consultant or a SAS, you need to know the start date to be able to model your career going forward, because obviously it's a massive unknown when you would get a consultant post. And then you tell it when you're appointed, and then it will know the pay scale. So for example, for this member, let's say they started in England, and let's say they started in August in, let's say, 2020 in COVID, and then you can see it's worked out what your future planned changes are going forward in terms of your salary, and then you can add in things like CEAs, on-call and other payments. So let's just keep that like that for a second. And then this really important bit as well is are there any other changes? So for example, let's say, where are we now? We're in August. Let's say on the 1st of September 2026, you were going to get a car that was minus £10,000. So start salary sacrifice for car, and then let's say you're going to keep that for let's just say 3 years, September, or no, let's say more, say till 2032, and then that £10,000 would go back, and then you can put that for end salary sacrifice. And again, as part of concierge, we'll work through any planned changes that you've got, so we can kind of put that in there, and then that will model your salary forward, because modelling a salary is crucial. So similarly, you could put, if you're going to become the clinical director or the chief executive, or a promotion, demotion, anything, you can put whatever you want in here to map your pay going forward. And then you can tell it about your state pension. Now, many people, but not all, depending when you started working in the UK and how much service you've got in the UK, will be expecting a full state pension. And so if you are, you can just tick yes. But if not, one of the documents that you could have uploaded in Plus was your state pension forecast. Or if you say no, you can just put your state pension forecast in as well. And then that's going to help model your income going forward. And then a crucial part to any pension modelling, because of the dreaded taper, is going to be non-pensionable pay. And really important, even if you think, I'm nowhere near 200k, to put your non-pensionable pay in anyway, because with things like retire and return, all of a sudden, if you add, for example, a typical consultant salary at 12 PAs, and then you add in a pension, a 1995 pension, and those years between partial retirement and full retirement, where you're getting your, if you've got a 40, 50k pension on top of a 160, 170k salary, all of a sudden people that were never in tapering may find themselves tapered in retirement. So let's just say they've got 100k of earnings outside, then that will use that going forward. And then what we can do is we can go to predicting future pension, and we can see here what the pension are at the ages that we want to go, and depending how fed up with work we are or how much we're enjoying work, we can change that. So we could say, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to go till 60, and so I'm not going to take any actuarial reduction in the 1995 scheme, and then I'm going to go on till 65. And then, unlike a traditional pension report, which is a piece of paper or a PDF, you can change this as often as you want, and you can change how much you're planning on working in pensionable and non-pensionable pay terms. But let's just reintroduce an actuarial reduction in there by saying 57, and let's just say 61, so working for 4 years. And this is how much pension you can expect at each of those ages. If you've used the 05 extract, it will know whether or not you've used the 1920 compensation scheme in England and Wales, and it will show you what your compensation payment is there as well. And then another new feature is if you want to kind of see what your numbers look like in an award style statement, you can see all of the values here. So it would show what kind of the statement would look like for the partial retirement award, And so these are the 1995 section scheme pays bits, and then it would show what the retirement benefit modelled award would look like in the future to your point of retirement. And then there's a whole load of annual allowance charges there, because I've ticked the bit saying future all goes to annual allowance. So, and then just very quickly onto these 4 charts, and then I'll just kind of let Andy do a bit of summing up as well if he wants, and then we'll take a few questions. So we've got a page here that will allow us to look forward to what the future holds in terms of annual allowance. And so again, so we can tick here. So let's say there was a big charge in any of these years, we can take them out and say we're going to pay them cash, or if we take future out, if we're not going to pay any future charges cash, they can all fall off. That's assuming you've got the cash to pay your annual allowance charges and you're motivated and want to do that. But that will allow you to see the view going forward. And then we've got a really nice view here that looks at your pay in terms of the totality of your pay, from taxable pay from the NHS, from any pension earnings you've got, and from state pension, and how that interacts with key thresholds. So for example, here there's this 200k line here, so you can see when this person's working, they're already well over the taper, and then when they add in that pension, they're way over it. So they can say, well, okay, well, maybe I don't want to taper, maybe I want to kind of come down here, and then so you can play with these charts. Well, so there you are. I mean, 0.3 is a bit excessive, isn't it? Let's make that 0.4. So that's saying, doing 40%, but they're still a shade over the taper. So now let's just trim their non-NHS earnings a tiny bit, and then they can fall under the taper. So again, this just gives you complete control over looking about what the future looks like, and you can do that on a 20-year all the way up to a 50-year basis to see what your income looks like based on tax thresholds as they sit today. And bear in mind that we've had fiscal drag for a while, and my best guess probably is that these tax thresholds aren't going to change anytime soon. Andy, just remind me what date they've said they're all going to change. Is it 2031 to tax year was the end of fiscal drag? Is that the latest announcement?
I think so, yeah. But considering the 100,000 barrier's been the same since 2010 now, I think I think expected to carry on.
Yeah. So with all pension planning, you can only plan things based on the current legislation, and all of this may change with a change of government or with a change of leader, as we've just had. So that's taxable pay versus thresholds. And then we've got what your taxable income looks like. So again, just a really nice chart. Again, we can play with all of these to say, well, okay, what happens if I work till 60 and then I carry on working that bit till I'm 64? All of these are going to change in real terms. You can see how your taxable pay is built up, composed of your pay from the NHS, whatever value you gave it for your pay from the non-NHS, and then 1995 pension is the dark green, 2015 pension is the light green, red is state pension, so you can see what your pay looks like going forward. And then crucially for planning, you can see what your net pay looks like. So arbitrarily there's a value of 6,000 in here, and so this looks at your pay after taxes, your monthly net pay, and compares it to that 6,000 level. So we can see here that they've done pretty well. They've achieved 6,000 in every year, but there's a few years here between retirement and between partial retirement and full retirement. There's those 4 years, and you can see there's a shortfall of 459. But again, you could see, well, okay, well, maybe I could switch off that shortfall or make it worse by changing any of these parameters and working more or less. And of course, you can change the value to whatever value you want. So if you say I want 7,000, for example, you can change those values there. So I've almost lost my voice, Andy. Do you want to kind of give a bit of a summary, and then we'll turn to any questions that we've had? Yeah,
just whilst we're on this, we'll deal with one question. Platinum only is with concierge, isn't it, Tony? So
correct.
Platinum blows my mind. I'm an accountant, and Platinum blows my mind. You do need a little bit of help with this one. The rest of the scenarios are very much self-serving. But this one is one where you will get some assistance with entering the data. I think the summary is it's hugely complex annual allowance stuff, and obviously it's also affected by which country you're in and income levels and all kinds of things going on. What this is trying to do is trying to give you the information actually the pension system should do for you, but it doesn't, and it's not going to do. So whether it's, if you're looking at the bronze package, which is really the just calculating the growth side of things, that's very, very suitable for those very interested in where they're going and where they're up to. Silver talks about actually then as your income's growing around the 200,000 barrier. It also talks about the 100,000 barrier as well, which affects a lot of people. So just allows you some modelling there. Gold starts to talk about schemes pays, and as Tony said, scheme pays gets a really bad rap at times. And people focus on interest. I'm paying interest on this loan, but forgetting actually the pension is growing. It's quite interesting. I mean, this isn't advice, but it's quite interesting. The payback period is quite long with scheme pays. It's slightly different for GP partners. So GP partners who pay their employer contributions themselves, it's a slightly different calculation, but it's really useful to actually properly understand scheme pays. And actually, for a lot of people, it will take away a lot of the worry, which is good. And then platinum is a bit more, looking into the future. A lot of questions around what ifs and where we do this, and that's the kind of thing financial advisors deal with quite a lot. But people just like to understand their figures a little bit themselves as well, and just play around with things. So that allows you to do that as well. So really, that's what this whole product is trying to achieve. As I said, I've been through a lot of testing over the last few weeks, particularly on the bronze, the silver and gold stuff, and to me, it's always a learning experience for me as well, doing this kind of thing, which is quite useful as well. So yeah, hopefully that's given you a flavour on what it's going to do. As I said, annual allowance isn't going to go away. I can't see Andy Burnham scrapping annual allowance tax charges for doctors. Unfortunately, we're going to be stuck with it for a while. I can't see the thresholds changing either for a while. So everyone is going to have to face up to it at some point. So this is what it's trying to do.
So I'll just run through some of the questions, Andy, and you feel free to dip into any. So I've used it for last year. Do I need to register interest again for the new model again? No. So if you're on our mailing list, you'll get an email. As in, you should have got an email today as well announcing this webinar, for example. So you'll get that. They'll explain to you all the pricing and how to purchase, etc. Another person related says, I registered for the modeler in 25-26. Will the data be carried through to 26-27, even though on a different platform? Yes, it will. That's been a massive technical challenge for us because Calculator Studio basically announced that product is going bust at the end of August, but we've made it so you can drop in your URL or you can drop in your PDF in a drag and drop, and then that will auto-populate your 26-27 modeler, whichever version you purchase, and then you're just going to obviously need to then add the 26-27 stuff on top of that. So for example, it will need to know what your final closing pay was from a March pay slip or from the updated TRS, and it will need an up-to-date pay slip to estimate what your current pay is. Catherine asks a question that I get most days. We haven't received PSS statement for 23-24, 24-25, but have the calculations from your modeler. NHS BSA are refusing statements. What do we do? Okay, well, it's difficult. The scheme are under a legal obligation to produce them. They're obviously very, very late. Tens of thousands of people still don't have an RPSS. That was due October 24 by statute. Lots of people don't have a 23-24 PSS. That was due the same year. 24-25 was due last October. Lots of people still don't have it, and I'm sure this October will be in the same position, although some people have already got their 25-26. There's not a lot you can do other than estimate, as you have done, and then either pay any charge via your tax return or use scheme pays based on an estimate until you get your final figures through. And if you use scheme pays, you will have 4 years to amend those values. If you think you've been treated shoddily, and I would suspect if you've not had any of those documents that you have been treated shoddily, complain. You have to go through the formal complaints process before you complain to the ombudsman, but some people have complained to the ombudsman and some people have had some compensation back from the ombudsman for atrocious administration. With my BMA hat on, we're doing lots of complaining, all the way up to the chief exec of NHS BSA, up to ministers, and also to HMRC. So if you're being treated badly, complain. Cindy, is this applicable to people who've had a break in income in recent years? So yes, but with proviso. So like last year, things get very complicated very quickly if you've had a break in service after 2022. So that will be a specialised concierge service only, and we'll need a bit more information like an 05 service and pay extract for you.
The next question's asked again, so in full.
Yes, hoping the new model can cover, well, one considers partial yet. Once I've just taken through platinum, that kind of takes you through partial and full retirement. One way of managing my adjustment is through unpaid childcare leave and shared parental leave. Will this be able to account for it? So again, yes, that's kind of a concierge one for kind of custom situations. Added years contract, show up anywhere on my TRS or NHS pension portal. No, they don't. But as I said, if on the modeler you go to the bit where you put in your added years, there's a link here to get an 05 series and pay extract, and then that will be on the bottom of that. So that's a way of getting your contract. We don't have TRS in Scotland. Do we need something different instead? Yes. So I've not gone through Scotland, but the new Plus product and concierge will work for Scotland. Now, there's a few things that you don't have in Scotland. One is decent pay slips. Your pay slips are a bit rubbish, I'm afraid. I have fed that back to the right people. Two, you don't have a decent total reward statement that's got things like all your pensionable pay since 2015, and I've fed that back to the relevant people that it's a bit rubbish. But you do have something called CPE extracts. So in that Plus tool, you can, and there's one for each year, you can drag and drop your 10 CPE extracts in Plus, or we can do it for you in concierge to build up a position for Scottish members to account for the deficiencies that they had. Can you model Hokey on the 2015 pension if you pass or retire? So you can do it yourself. So Hokey doesn't cause mischief for 2015 in the same way that it causes mischief for 1995. So if you've partially retired and you're only in the 2015 scheme, it's based on your actual pay, and so actual pay doesn't really mind whether or not you're in and out of the scheme. But do look at the numbers carefully, because generally Hokey is a bit of a waste of time, and you're usually better off by staying in the scheme and sucking up any annual allowance charges, either paying yourself or using scheme pays. The other thing that Hokey does is create an absolute admin nightmare for you. So you will find that normal delays can turn into huge delays. Now Andy's going to come in and say GP partners are different. So Andy, come and say.
I'm going to say in that scenario, what actually is quite useful of doing is one of the questions I get asked quite a bit. Is someone thinking about taking partial retirement? So they know their partial retirement figures, perhaps just going to take the 95 benefits, carry on with the 15 benefits, come back, and then they're actually looking at reducing time to get below the 200,000 level. I think if you've gone over the 200,000 level, which is then creating an annual allowance tax charge, when you have a look at the scheme pays options in the models, then the modeler actually it will show you the effect of the scheme pays, which isn't as disastrous as you may think. Probably the more important question for someone taking partial retirement is how close they can get to the 200,000 level.
Okay, there's a whole range of questions about Scotland. So I wasn't going to do Scotland, but I'm just going to show you Scotland in real time. Now, you can see these gear cogs are smoking, and that's because I've given it some scanned documents, and some of them are really rubbish photos. For example, payslips going back to 2016. but I've just given that a ton of documents. I've given it ABS, I've given it ABS RSS, I've given it a dozen or so CPRE exports, and we can see here, if we go through to here, that we've got all of these stuff from Scotland, from the pay slips. We can see we've got on-call, we can see we've got discretionary points, we've got EPAs worked, and then if I go through to SPPA equivalent, because you don't have the 05 savings and pay extract, what this has done is it's reconstructed one for you. It's made one up from the uploaded documents, and you can see I just did that and it processed them in a few seconds. And so I can see here that I've got 1 year from a P60, because I think the CPRE system didn't start until 16-17, or for some for 17-18. So that's yellow because that's that, and you can see it's automatically calculated that this person used the RECT scheme twice, once in 1920 and once in 22-23. So we've got those opt-out periods, so that will allow us to do basically hokey calculations in Scotland in the same way that we can do via concierge. So Plus will be available from the get-go for people in Scotland as per that, and it will upload it. But if you're Scotland and Scotland and complicated, you've had opted-out periods, that will be concierge. And Plus and concierge are separate, so some people may want to get both. They may want to get concierge. Concierge is like a one-off. We will process everything for you and we'll do some validation checks for you. But we won't then kind of keep on adding documents if you come back to us and say, oh, I've got another payslip, or I've got another PSS, or I've got another ABS. And so what some people will want to do is start off with a validated concierge version, and then they will want to get Plus as well, so they can keep on adding further documents to their modeler later on. When is the likely release date for the new modeler? So we are waiting on the BSA, because most people are in England and Wales. We're waiting for the BSA to come out with this year's TRS, which we're told is going to be the 19th of August. But as we know with the BSA, not everything happens either when it's expected to, or whether than they announce. But assuming it does come out on the 19th, it's going to be out within a few days of the 19th of August. We just need to kind of test it and check that there's no surprises in the new TRS format, so that Plus and everything else can read it, and we can direct people to which boxes to go to. So we may start selling before that comes out. We anticipate there's going to be probably a bit of a queue for concierge and things, so we may start selling it to form a queue, and then we will just kind of get rid of that queue. But I am going away on holiday as well at the end of August, because I've worked my nuts off, and Andy's worked his nuts off, and other developers have worked their nuts off to try and, pardon my bad language, to try and get all of this done, because Calculator Studio pulled the plug on the previous products at the end of August. So I guess that kind of takes me to the new website. So if people haven't registered, and if you're on the waiting list, you don't need to register again, but you can go to register.goldstonepenfintech.com. It looks very much like the previous one, and then you can put in your details, you can join the list. And also, if you want to read about the modelers and what the different modelers do, so basically what Andy and I have just taught you through: bronze, silver, gold and platinum. I've shown you Plus. I've not gone through all the concierge pages. I'll do a separate video on that another day. There is also going to be, hopefully from September, the ability to book a call with a specialist medical accountant. So they will get a copy of your modeler after you've completed your modeler, or after a concierge has completed your modeler, and you can pay to get a Teams meeting with them, and then they will go through all of your modeler with you and answer any questions that you have. Again, it's not financial advice, but what you will get is a very senior specialist medical accountant. We've basically specified that they've all got to have either associate director to partner level with a minimum of 5 years as a specialist medical accountant. So they won't match Andy's 40 years or however many years it is as a specialist medical accountant, because Andy's retired now, so he can't do this. But you will get somebody who's very senior who knows all of this stuff inside out, and be able to ask questions to them. And again, because we anticipate this is going to be subject to demand, and because we anticipate there's going to be a bit of a queue, people can pay a fully refundable deposit, and then as soon as the booking system opens, the people at the top of the queue will be able to get their appointments in first, to discuss things. But hopefully we've released all of this well early enough in the tax year, so that by the time people reach decision times, and decision times usually are around things like the 31st of January. Do you pay cash? Do you pay scheme pays? Or towards the end of the tax year, it gets very important to relook at things in kind of February and March. Are you close to 100k? Are you close to 100k? Could a SIP help? Could bringing your pay under 100k or 200k help via the various means available, etc. So all of these products will be in full swing by then. I think we've answered all of the questions, Andy. So I think that just leaves me to thank Andy for all his help in getting this out. As I said, we really, we'd planned on upgrading the product, and I've been working on things like Platinum for well over a year, but we hadn't hoped to bring it out so soon with a deadline given to us of 3 months away. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much if you're one of the 5,500 people that used the modeler last year. I hope you can see a ton of work has gone into this. There's loads of new features, but this is not going to be a static product, and it's just going to continue to get better and better, we hope, and help you with that journey of navigating annual allowance and making complicated financial decisions. So thank you very much from me.
Yeah, and thanks very much from me.
Thank you very much all. Bye now.